My name is Amy Snyder, and I'm 27 years old. I live with my dad and mom, the three of us forming a close-knit family since I was young. My admiration for my dad runs deep. He manages his own business and is always immersed in his work. Though he's often busy and away from home, he cherishes the time we spend together whenever he can make it back. On his days off, he makes sure to prioritize our time together. He's truly a wonderful father. My mom's role in our family is quite different. She's never worked outside the home as far as I can recall. While she takes care of household matters, she's never been involved in supporting my dad's business or pursuing a career herself. She enjoys a life of leisure, often dressed up and socializing. Despite our comfortable lifestyle, I've always felt a disconnect with her. She's never been particularly fond of children, and I've often felt overlooked and lonely. Thankfully, my dad has always been there to fill that void. I think he understood my mom's indifference towards me and made it his mission to ensure I never felt neglected or alone. Mom, I'm home. Oh, is it that time already? Mom's heading out, so have some snacks and take care of the house, okay? Did we plan to go shopping and make curry today? Sorry, something came up unexpectedly. We'll do it next time, all right? As a child, my mom often broke promises like these effortlessly. Initially, it would bring me to tears, but I learned not to expect her promises to hold. My dad, in contrast, never made vague commitments like maybe or we'll see. Over time, I grew to see him as reliable and trustworthy. I looked up to him and eventually expressed my desire to join his company after graduating from the university. Being an only child, I began envisioning myself inheriting his business someday, inspired by his dedication and integrity. After I turned 20, my father began taking me out for drinks, and those moments became invaluable learning experiences for me. Meanwhile, my mother's involvement in my upbringing remained superficial. As I matured into adulthood, her only significant intervention occurred during my sophomore year of college. Dad, I want to work at your company after I graduate. I'm already preparing for it. I even hope to succeed you someday, I enthusiastically shared one evening. Amy, are you sure about this? Dad replied, a hint of caution in his voice. Wait a minute, a girl shouldn't be doing that, my mother interjected dismissively. Why not? I pressed. A woman should find a good man and let her husband provide for her, she asserted. It was such a typical response from my mother. Feeling like she couldn't understand my ambitions, I didn't pursue the conversation further that day. I was determined not to lead a life dependent on someone else's choices, unlike my mother. Throughout the rest of my college years, I dedicated myself to studying diligently. And as soon as I graduated, I joined my father's company. Although I couldn't convince my mother, it seemed she eventually resigned herself to my decision. If that's how you want to live your life, then so be it. But remember, you'll be the one to suffer for not listening to your mother, she remarked. If that's what it takes, then I'm okay with it, I replied firmly. And so, I followed my father's path into the company. This decision only deepened the divide between my mother and me. On the other hand, I grew closer to my father, spending more time with him than ever before, strengthening our bond. Looking back now, I realize my mother likely wasn't pleased with how things turned out. When I joined my father's company, he dedicated himself to training me rigorously. Little did I know then, he was battling a serious illness. Over the next 6 months, he introduced me to key contacts and immersed me in every aspect of the business. Then, one day at work, he collapsed. An ambulance rushed him to the hospital, and for the next 5 years, he fought bravely against his illness. Amy, how's the company managing without your dad? My mom asked one day. It's challenging, but everyone's supporting me. Dad prepared me well for this, I assured her. As long as that's true. But remember, if you, as a woman taking over, cause the company to fail, it would reflect poorly on all of us, she cautioned. Mom, you've never shown much interest or love for the company. You're more concerned about appearances, I retorted. It saddens me to hear you say that, she replied sadly. In those early days after my father fell ill, such arguments with my mom were frequent. Despite his declining health, Dad would still visit the company on his better days, though he spent more time in and out of hospitals. Over the 5 years, his strength waned until he was mostly confined to bed in his final year. During one of his last visits to the company, he solemnly said, "This company and its employees are precious treasures to me, but I have to let go of my treasure. Dad, I've observed you closely over these years. I believe I can take this on," I expressed earnestly. "Can I count on you?" he asked. "Please trust me to protect this place and everyone here," I replied, determined to live up to his expectations and earn his trust. From that moment, the mantle of leadership passed to me. With Dad mostly in the hospital, I juggled my responsibilities, rarely finding time to return home. Despite the demands of my new role, I made it a priority to visit him regularly. My mother's involvement was minimal. She did the bare necessities like bringing changes of clothes. It seemed even that was a burden to her. What does Mom really feel about Dad? Does she have any gratitude or compassion for him, seeing him like this? I wondered, feeling a pang of sympathy for Dad. I remembered his tireless efforts when I was young, unable to feel my mother's affection. Despite my exhaustion, I persisted in visiting him as often as I could. This routine continued for about a year until he peacefully passed away in his sleep. I found myself overwhelmed with tasks, barely able to process my grief. My mother, unaware of the extent of my responsibilities, insisted I manage everything, from funeral arrangements to hospital paperwork. Realistically, I knew she had never been involved in such matters, so I silently shouldered the burden alone. "Amy, now that the funeral's over, you've settled down, haven't you?" My mother broached the subject the day after the service. "Please leave this house. I've just inherited 200 million yen, so I have no use for you anymore. Thank you," she said matter-of-factly. "I've been waiting for you to say that," I responded calmly, realizing further discussion was futile. Did she truly believe money could replace family bonds and responsibilities? With countless unanswered questions swirling in my mind, I resolved to leave the next day. I swiftly arranged for a service to sell off all my personal belongings. My mother was taken aback by how efficiently I organized my departure. Little did she know, I harbored a secret. I didn't understand why she claimed to have inherited 200 million yen, because my father had entrusted all financial matters to me. According to his wishes, I was the sole inheritor. Not a single yen was earmarked for my mother. "Your mother lacks the understanding to manage finances or spend wisely. I want you to provide her with a monthly allowance for household expenses. If she receives a lump sum, she'll likely squander it all. She may not heed my words, but if she complains, tell her she won't receive a single yen," my father had instructed firmly before his health declined. "No way. Just kidding. But if you have trouble dealing with her, give her this," he added, handing me an SD card containing a video message from him to my mother. Back then, I never imagined I would need to show it to her. Yet, judging by her recent behavior, I knew that day might soon arrive. Alone in the expansive house after I moved out, I anticipated my mother would reach out soon, but her call came sooner than expected. "Come home immediately." "Ha! What's going on?" "I'm at work," I replied. "I just need to talk to you." "Please come quickly," she insisted. "She's so demanding," I muttered, grabbing the SD card. Reluctantly, I drove back to my childhood home. As soon as she saw me, she started accusing me. "You took all of your father's inheritance, didn't you? I knew something was wrong when you left so suddenly. Hand it over to me now." "How can you be so greedy? You can't even act like a proper mother. Who do you think you're talking to?" I shot back, frustration simmering. Silently, I handed her the SD card. "What's this?" she asked. "Oh, maybe you don't know how to watch it," I mocked gently. Setting up my laptop, I inserted the SD card and played the video. On the screen, my father appeared, vibrant and healthy. "I wonder how my mother will react to this video letter," I thought, leaving the room quietly. My father's voice reached out from beyond the grave. Would it resonate with her? Upon my return, I found my mother in tears, a sight that surprised me deeply. I had never seen her defy my father while he was alive, but would his words touch her heart now that he was gone? "Mom, are you all right?" I asked cautiously. I think so, for now. I understand. I'll respect your father's wishes and leave everything to you from now on. Please go home for today. Call me again when you've had time to cool down," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. I sensed she didn't want me to witness her vulnerable state, so I left for home that evening, pondering the complex emotions that now fill our strained relationship. I was filled with questions about how my father's message had impacted my mother. Nearly a month passed without hearing from her. Concerned, I decided to visit my parents' house during my lunch break. To my surprise, my mother wasn't home. Determined, I returned that evening, relieved to find the lights on. "Sorry for dropping in unexpectedly. I came earlier today, but you weren't here, and I got worried," I explained upon seeing her. I apologize. I was at my part-time job during the day, she confessed. What? A part-time job? I couldn't believe it. My mother had never shown any inclination towards working. What had changed? Didn't you watch that video? It was meant for you, so I didn't watch it. Take it home. You should see it too, Amy. May I watch it? She asked, handing over the SD card. With a mix of curiosity and apprehension about what my father had conveyed, I returned to my office and sat at his desk. There, I played the video. Honey, if you're watching this, it means you haven't been able to reach Amy. First of all, thank you so much for helping me raise Amy all these years. Without you, I couldn't have managed the company while caring for Amy. Something about my father's tone felt off. Then he said something that shocked me. You've taken care of Amy even though she's not your own child, and I am deeply grateful for your dedication over the years. But as a result, you've sacrificed your own dreams and livelihood. I take full responsibility for allowing you to live a life of comfort. I worry about your future once I'm gone, as there will be no one to support you. I'm not my mother's child, I blurted out in disbelief, the pieces starting to fit together. Despite the lack of emotional connection, she had cared for me daily, cooking and tending to my basic needs as if I were her own. Who was this person? I didn't register our marriage because you felt guilty about your sister, so I ended up supporting your living and didn't do anything else. I couldn't believe the revelations my father spoke so clearly. It was all new to me, his recounting of the past and his hopes for our future. I spent the entire night processing everything and returned to my mother the next day. Mom, I watched Dad's video yesterday. I know everything now, I began. I raised you because I promised to, she replied simply. What about my biological mother? I pressed. You're the child of my sister and your father. My sister passed away shortly after giving birth to you. I promised your grieving father that I would help raise you. That's how I became your mother, she explained. With my mother's story, everything fell into place, even the parts I had speculated about. I remembered my mother working at a diner, where my father used to visit. She was vibrant and ambitious then, dreaming of owning her own diner. But when she chose to become my mother, she set aside that dream. My father's video had reminded her of that dream, prompting her to pursue it once again. Now she was working hard as a trainee to fulfill that long-held ambition. I should have started working sooner. It's enjoyable and it suits me well, my mother remarked. I had no idea. I feel responsible for not knowing sooner. I apologize sincerely. It's not your fault, Amy. I made that choice myself. I've never been good with children, and I know I caused you trouble, she admitted. I never imagined we'd have a conversation like this, I reflected. At this stage of my life, I finally feel like I understand my mother a bit, I added. Since then, we've had many conversations. We decided to use the money left by Dad to fund the opening of her diner. Once she started working, she became more humble. She was hesitant about discussing funds for the diner, which would have been unthinkable not long ago. While keeping my regular job, I've been helping her with the diner's opening, which means I see her often now. I credit this newfound bond to Dad. Regarding living expenses, she insists on managing on her own income, refusing help from Dad's inheritance. Promise me you'll let me know if you ever struggle. Dad entrusted me with taking care of you. I'm fine living independently, it's not expensive, but for the diner's expenses, I'll rely on you, she said sincerely. Absolutely, I'm excited too. Give it your best shot. After many years, we finally become a true family, living together harmoniously. She may not be my birth mother, but it feels like the right time for me to understand this. Your diner is opening tomorrow. Your dream is coming true. Watching you work so passionately at the company reminded me of my own dreams when I was younger. I believe that's why I've come this far. It's all thanks to you and Dad. Thank you, Mom. Promise me you'll always be my mom, Amy. Let's get along even better from now on. After all, we only have each other. That's true. After my father's passing, the truth came out. I accepted reality and chose to move forward with just my mom and me. Watching my mom's lifestyle, I considered moving back to my hometown to live with her again. I'm not much of a cook, so my mom worries about my diet and supports the idea of me moving back. Dad would probably be surprised to see how well we're getting along. I'll protect his house, company, and the inheritance he left behind, all while continuing to build a strong relationship with my mom. To solidify our bond as a family, we visit the graves of my father and my biological mother, my mom's older sister, to update them on our lives. Finally, I'm officially registered as my mom's daughter, Amy Foreign.